Dear Chosen One, there is a contract with your name on it that you never signed. It was placed upon your life before you could speak, woven into the fabric of everything you were taught to believe about who you could be and what you were allowed to become. This agreement promised you survival in exchange for silence, acceptance in exchange for smallness, and peace in exchange for your complicity in your own diminishment. But something inside you refused to honor terms you never consciously agreed to. They are watching you now with a kind of panic they have never had to feel before. Not because you have become violent or rebellious in the way they know how to handle, but because you have done something far more dangerous. You have simply stopped pretending. You stopped dumbing yourself down to make others comfortable. You stopped shrinking your truth to fit into conversations that were never designed to hold it. You stopped performing the version of yourself that kept their systems running smoothly. And that refusal, that quiet sovereignty, has set off alarms in places you cannot see. The governments, both visible and invisible, both elected and inherited, both human and architectural, built entire civilizations on a single assumption: that you would keep playing along. They never prepared for the Chosen One who would simply withdraw consent, not with drama or declaration, but with the calm, unstoppable clarity of someone who finally remembered who they were before the world told them who to be. You are that one, and your refusal to dumb yourself down is not just threatening their systems. It is dismantling the very foundation they were built upon. If this word resonates with your soul right now, do me a favor. Click the like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and write the word sovereign in the comments to seal this moment in the digital world. And if you're ready to align your spiritual awakening with true prosperity, check out the ebook in the description, The Call to Prosperity. True prosperity, Chosen One, is multidimensional. It extends far beyond material wealth, encompassing the realms of peace, alignment, and fulfillment. It is the calm that transcends understanding, relationships grounded in truth, health born from harmony, and creativity that flows freely, without fear. It is the joy that no circumstance can steal, because its source is internal, divine, and eternal. This is the prosperity that the systems never wanted you to discover, the one that makes you ungovernable, whole, and free. The world offers only survival, distraction, and dependence, but the divine offers abundance, purpose, and the full activation of your potential. When you walk this path of freedom, you will never be content with scarcity disguised as security. As you deepen in this reality, you stop needing validation from a world still asleep. You no longer crave applause from systems built on illusion, for you have been affirmed by heaven itself. This shift, from seeking approval to embodying divine certainty, is your ultimate liberation. It makes you untouchable to control. They can no longer manipulate you through shame, fear, or isolation, because you are whole, sovereign, and sustained. You have become what they fear most: a being spiritually awake, mentally clear, emotionally healed, and materially supported. The awakened soul is a revolution without violence, a threat to every false structure that feeds on ignorance and insecurity. You are that revolution in human form. In practice, this awakening looks like peace replacing argument and discernment guiding your focus. You stop debating with the unwilling and conserve your energy for those who can truly hear. You curate your consciousness, unsubscribing from fear, detaching from manipulation, and guarding your mind like a sacred temple. You stop explaining your path to those committed to misunderstanding, and you honor yourself by saying no without guilt and setting boundaries without apology. You begin to attract your true community, souls who resonate with your frequency, celebrate your growth, and expand through your freedom. Finally, you invest in what truly matters: your healing, your purpose, your relationships, and your creative expression. You no longer scatter yourself thin. You live with depth and divine clarity, embodying the world you wish to see, an act of service more powerful than any sermon. A step-by-step guide to activating abundance in every area of your life. Now, let us go deeper into what is really happening here. Let us talk about how this invisible agreement was installed in the first place. You were born into a world that had already decided what intelligence was allowed to look like, what success was permitted to sound like, and what power was acceptable to feel like. Your parents, through no fault of their own, handed you a script they had inherited from their parents, who inherited it from theirs. Generation after generation, the terms of the contract were passed down like genetic material, embedding itself so deeply that questioning it felt like questioning gravity itself. The educational systems you were placed into were not designed to unleash your full capacity. They were engineered to measure your willingness to conform, to follow instructions, to arrive at pre-approved conclusions. You were rewarded not for your curiosity, but for your compliance, not for your original thought, but for your ability to repeat what you were told. And if you dared to think outside the lines they had drawn, you were labeled disruptive, difficult, or worse. You were medicated, marginalized, and made to feel that something was fundamentally wrong with you. The media you consumed told you stories about heroes, but only heroes who saved the world in ways that did not actually challenge the world. You were given myths of rebellion that always ended with reintegration into the system. You were sold freedom in the form of products and lifestyles, but never the kind of freedom that would allow you to step outside the entire marketplace of manufactured identity. Every movie, every song, every advertisement whispered the same message: you are free to choose, as long as you choose from the options we provide. The religions and spiritual systems, many of them, taught you that humility meant making yourself small, that righteousness meant never questioning authority, and that faith meant accepting suffering as inevitable. They gave you a God who wanted you obedient more than awake, compliant more than conscious, and grateful for crumbs when you were born to feast at the table of divine inheritance. And if you dared to suggest that perhaps the divine wanted you powerful, prosperous, and fully alive, you were called prideful, worldly, or led astray by ego. The social circles you moved through enforced the contract through a currency more powerful than money: belonging. You learned quickly that acceptance was conditional, that love had terms, and that community required you to edit yourself down to the lowest common denominator. If you spoke too clearly, thought too deeply, or shined too brightly, you were excluded, not always explicitly, but through the subtle withdrawal of warmth, the quiet isolation that comes when you refuse to play the game everyone else has agreed to play. Even the language you were given was designed to limit you. Words for freedom were always paired with words for chaos. Words for power were always shadowed by words for corruption. Words for awakening were dismissed as delusion. You were taught to describe your own expansion in terms that made it sound dangerous, your own clarity in terms that made it sound like confusion, and your own sovereignty in terms that made it sound like selfishness. The vocabulary itself was rigged against your liberation. And here is the thing they never told you. The contract was always optional. It was never law. It was never divine decree. It was simply an agreement that required your participation to have any power at all. But participation through ignorance still counts as participation. Your silence was taken as consent. Your compliance was interpreted as agreement. And your survival within the system was used as evidence that the system was working exactly as intended. Until the day you woke up and realized it was not working for you at all. That day might have come suddenly. A crisis, a loss, a moment of such profound disillusionment that the entire facade shattered in an instant. Or it might have come slowly, a gradual accumulation of small rebellions, tiny refusals, quiet moments where you chose truth over comfort and integrity over approval. However it came, and once you saw the contract for what it was, you could never unsee it. Once you recognized the bars of the cage, you could never again pretend you were standing in an open field. You started asking questions that had no approved answers. You started noticing patterns that were not supposed to be visible. You started connecting dots that were deliberately kept separate. And most dangerously of all, you started trusting your own perception more than the official narrative. You stopped outsourcing your sense of reality to experts, authorities, and institutions that had proven themselves unworthy of that trust. You became your own reference point. And that is when everything changed. The system has 1,000 ways to bring people back into compliance. Shame is usually the first tool. They will make you feel selfish for prioritizing your truth, crazy for trusting your intuition, and arrogant for believing you might see something others do not. If shame does not work, they escalate to isolation. They will remove you from spaces, conversations, and relationships. Not always obviously, but effectively. You will find yourself uninvited, overlooked, and gradually erased from networks you once belonged to. If isolation does not break you, they move to gaslighting. They will tell you that what you experienced did not happen the way you remember. They will rewrite history in real time and insist you are misremembering, overreacting, or projecting. They will bring in others to confirm their version of events until you start to doubt your own mind. This is not accidental. This is strategy. Because a person who doubts their own perception is a person who can be controlled again. When gaslighting fails, they try seduction. They will offer you opportunities, platforms, and recognition, but only if you soften your message, dilute your truth, and bring your light down to a level that does not make others uncomfortable. They will dangle the very things you once wanted in front of you and ask only that you compromise just a little bit. Just this once. Just enough to be palatable. Just enough to be marketable. Just enough to stop being a threat. But you did not bend. You did not break. You did not dim your light to make their darkness feel less obvious. And that is when the panic set in. Because every tool they had relied on for generations was failing. You were immune to shame because you had found something more valuable than approval. You were unbothered by isolation because you had discovered a connection to Source that no human rejection could sever. You were unshaken by gaslighting because you had learned to trust the authority of your own lived experience. And you were untempted by their seductions because you had tasted something they could never offer. True freedom. Not the branded, commercialized, controlled opposition version of freedom, but the kind of liberation that comes from living in total alignment with your soul's purpose. The kind of power that flows when you stop seeking permission and start operating from divine authorization. The kind of peace that arrives when you realize you do not need the system's validation because you have the Creator's anointing. Now let us talk about what is really happening in the unseen realms when a chosen one refuses to dumb themselves down. There are structures of power that exist beyond what you can see with your physical eyes. Architectures of control that operate through frequency, through collective agreement, through the manipulation of consciousness itself. These are not conspiracy theories. These are spiritual realities that ancient texts have been pointing to for millennia. Principalities and powers, rulers of darkness, spiritual wickedness in high places. The language has always been there for those with eyes to see. These structures require a very specific condition to maintain their dominance: a sleeping population. Not physically asleep, but spiritually unconscious. People who live on autopilot, who think in borrowed thoughts, who dream in pre-approved dreams, and who never question the fundamental premises of the reality they have been handed. As long as the majority remains in this state, the system perpetuates itself effortlessly. It is a self-regulating mechanism powered by the collective unconsciousness of the masses. Your compliance is the fuel. Your conformity is the foundation. But when even one person fully wakes up, not partially, not theoretically, but actually wakes up and begins operating from that awakened state, it creates a disruption in the field. You become what they call in quantum physics an observer who collapses the wave function. Your consciousness, when fully activated, literally changes the nature of reality around you. You stop being predictable. You stop being controllable. You stop feeding the system with your energy, attention, and agreement. And that creates a problem they do not know how to solve. Here is what they understand that most people do not. Consciousness is contagious. When you stand in your full knowing, when you speak from your full authority, when you live from your full power, you give others permission to do the same. Not through what you say, but through what you embody. You become a frequency disruptor. Just by being yourself, you start waking up everyone around you. Not forcefully, not through preaching or convincing, but through resonance. Your coherence activates their dormant coherence. Your sovereignty reminds them of their own. This is what they panic about. Not your individual awakening. They have contingency plans for individuals. What terrifies them is the potential for exponential awakening. 1 becomes 2, 2 becomes 4, 4 becomes 8, and suddenly the critical mass shifts. Suddenly, there are more people operating outside the agreement than inside it. And when that happens, the entire structure collapses. Not through revolution, not through violence, but through simple withdrawal of energetic support. The empire falls because no one is holding it up anymore. You have to understand something crucial here. Governments, as you know them, are just the visible face of something much older and much more organized. There are systems of control that have been in place for thousands of years, passing through different civilizations, different empires, different forms, but always maintaining the same essential function: to keep humanity operating at a fraction of its true capacity. Because a fully activated human being is the most powerful force in creation. You are made in the image and likeness of the divine. Do you understand what that means? You carry creative authority. You have dominion. You are designed to shape reality itself. But that power is only accessible when you are awake, when you are conscious, when you are operating from your true identity rather than the false identity that was constructed for you. The entire agenda of these control structures is to keep you identified with the small self, the ego, the personality, the social mask, the trauma responses, the conditioned beliefs. As long as you think you are just a biological organism trying to survive in a hostile world, you remain manageable. But the moment you remember that you are an eternal spiritual being having a temporary human experience, everything changes. The governments, both terrestrial and non-terrestrial, both human and non-human, have built elaborate systems to keep you focused on survival, scarcity, threat, and competition. They keep you busy, distracted, entertained, and exhausted. They feed you information designed to trigger fear, division, and helplessness. They give you just enough comfort to keep you compliant, but not enough freedom to truly thrive. They allow you to complain, but never to actually change anything fundamental. This is not governance. This is spiritual warfare masquerading as civilization. And you, chosen one, have stepped out of that game. Not with a manifesto, not with a movement, but with something far more powerful: your unwillingness to participate in your own imprisonment. You stopped watching the news that was designed to hypnotize you. You stopped engaging in conversations that were meant to lower your frequency. You stopped seeking validation from systems that were built to deny your divinity. You simply withdrew your energy from the matrix and started building a life aligned with truth instead of conditioning. That withdrawal is what they cannot afford. Because every person who exits the program weakens the entire structure. It is like a house of cards. It looks solid until you realize it is held together only by collective belief. Remove enough believers, and the whole thing comes down. You are not just leaving, you are revealing that leaving is possible. You are not just free. You are demonstrating that freedom is available to anyone willing to pay the price of nonconformity. And that revelation is more dangerous to them than any army. Let me give you a reference point from ancient wisdom. In the book of Daniel, there is a story of 3 Hebrew men, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who refused to bow down to the king's golden image. Everyone else complied. The entire nation bowed, but these 3 stood. And their refusal was not just personal defiance, it was prophetic demonstration. They showed that the king's power was illusory, that his demands were illegitimate, and that alignment with the divine was more powerful than alignment with empire. They were thrown into a furnace that should have destroyed them, but they walked out untouched. Why? Because when you operate under divine authority, earthly systems have no jurisdiction over you. You are living that same story right now. The furnace you have been thrown into is not made of literal fire. It is made of social pressure, economic manipulation, psychological warfare, and spiritual attack. They have turned up the heat, expecting you to break, to bow, to come back into agreement with their demands. But you are still standing. And not only are you standing, you are thriving. You are walking through the fire with a 4th presence that they cannot see, cannot measure, and cannot control. That presence is the divine walking with you, protecting you, empowering you, and proving through your very existence that their threats are empty. This is why they panic. Not because you are fighting them, but because you are transcending them. You have found a frequency they cannot reach, a power source they cannot cut off, and an identity they cannot redefine. You are no longer playing on their board, by their rules, within their limitations. You have accessed something beyond their control, your own direct connection to Source. And once a person finds that connection, all the manipulations, all the propaganda, all the fear-based programming becomes irrelevant. You are operating from a different operating system entirely. And here is the part that keeps them up at night. They know they cannot stop you without revealing themselves. If they come after you too directly, too obviously, they expose the fact that they were never the benevolent authorities they pretended to be. They show their hand. They prove your point. So they are stuck. They cannot leave you alone because you are too dangerous, but they cannot openly attack you because that would wake up everyone else. So they are paralyzed, watching you walk free, hoping desperately that you are just an anomaly and not the beginning of an exodus. But you are not an anomaly. You are a prototype. You are the first wave of what is coming. a generation of chosen ones who will simply refuse to play the game, who will withdraw consent from systems that never served them, and who will build new realities based on principles of truth, freedom, and divine alignment. You are not here to fix the old world. You are here to anchor the new one. And your refusal to dumb yourself down is not rebellion. It is resurrection. You are bringing back to life a way of being that they buried centuries ago. Let me be very clear about something. When I say governments are panicking, I am not talking about the politicians you see on television. Most of them are just actors playing a role, middle managers in a structure they do not even fully understand. I am talking about the architects behind the architecture, the ones who design the systems, who write the scripts, who engineer the social conditions that keep people trapped in cycles of disempowerment. These are the ones who recognize what you represent. These are the ones who see you as a threat, not to their power, but to the illusion of their power. Because ultimately, they have no real power over you. They never did. They only had power borrowed from your belief in their authority. The moment you stopped granting them that belief, their power evaporated like morning mist under the rising sun. This is the secret they have protected for millennia. All tyranny is built on consent. All oppression requires participation. All control is ultimately self-imposed, maintained by the fear of what would happen if you stopped complying. But you called their bluff, and you discovered that the consequences they threatened were far less terrible than the consequence of living a lie. Now, I want you to understand something about the nature of spiritual warfare. The attacks you have experienced, the sudden obstacles, the unexpected betrayals, the financial pressures, the relationship breakdowns, the mental fog, the physical exhaustion, these are not random. They are coordinated, not necessarily by human hands, but by forces that work through human ignorance, through unconscious people, through systems designed to punish nonconformity. When you break the agreement, the system sends antibodies to bring you back into compliance or to eliminate you from the equation entirely. But here is what they did not count on. You are not fighting back in the way they expected. You are not engaging in their warfare. You are not meeting force with force, attack with attack, darkness with darkness. Instead, you have done something they have no defense against. You have simply chosen a different reality. You have stepped into a higher frequency where their weapons cannot reach. You have anchored yourself so deeply in divine truth that their lies bounce off you like arrows off armor. You have become untouchable, not through resistance, but through transcendence. This is the power of the chosen one that walks in full awareness. You do not need to fight the system. You do not need to expose every corruption or dismantle every structure. You simply need to embody a frequency so pure, so aligned, so coherent that it acts as a lighthouse in the darkness. Others will see your light and remember their own. They will feel your peace and question their own chaos. They will witness your freedom and recognize their own imprisonment. And one by one, they will begin their own journey out of the agreement and into awakening. Do you see now why your refusal to dumb yourself down is so critical? It is not about your intelligence in the conventional sense. It is not about your education, your credentials, or your ability to debate. It is about your unwillingness to compromise the clarity of your soul. It is about your commitment to remain whole in a world that profits from your fragmentation. It is about your determination to speak truth in a culture built on comfortable lies. Every time you refuse to shrink, you create a crack in the matrix. Every time you stand firm in your knowing, you weaken the illusion. Every time you choose authenticity over approval, you liberate not just yourself, but everyone watching. And make no mistake, they are watching. The ones who are ready to wake up are watching you closely. even if they do not say it out loud. They are studying how you move through the world with such peace despite the chaos. They are observing how you maintain your clarity despite the gaslighting. They are noticing how you continue to prosper despite the system's attempts to punish your non-compliance. You are showing them that another way is possible. You are living proof that the agreement is breakable, and that testimony is more powerful than any sermon you could preach. This is your prophetic function. You were not chosen because you are perfect. You were chosen because you are willing to stand alone when necessary, willing to be misunderstood, willing to be labeled crazy, arrogant, or delusional by people who are still asleep. You were chosen because somewhere in your spirit, you retained the memory of who you truly are, and no amount of programming could completely erase it. That memory has been your North Star, guiding you back to yourself, even when the entire world was telling you to get lost in their illusions. The scripture says, "You are a chosen generation, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, a peculiar people, that you should show forth the praises of Him who has called you out of darkness into His marvelous light." That word peculiar does not mean strange for the sake of being strange. It means set apart, distinct, operating by different rules. You are peculiar because you will not conform to patterns that were never meant for you. You are set apart because you have been called to a higher standard, a deeper truth, and a more authentic way of being. And that calling makes you a threat to every system built on lies. Now let us address the prosperity piece, because this is where many chosen ones get stuck. They think that spiritual awakening requires material poverty, that consciousness and abundance cannot coexist, that choosing truth means choosing struggle. This is one of the most damaging lies the system ever sold you. They want you spiritually awake, but financially broke, because a broke mystic is no threat to their economic structures. But a prosperous, conscious, fully activated chosen one, that is a revolutionary force they cannot contain. You need resources to build the new world. You need wealth to support the mission. You need abundance to prove that alignment with truth is more profitable than alignment with lies. That is why I created the call to prosperity, because prosperity is not just your right, it is your responsibility. When you thrive, you prove that God's system works better than theirs. When you prosper in integrity, you demonstrate that you do not need to compromise your soul to have your needs met. When you activate financial abundance through spiritual alignment, you become a walking testimony that the kingdom operates by different economics than the empire. The link is in the description. It is not just a guide, it is a weapon against the lie that you must choose between consciousness and comfort. Let me take you deeper into what is happening energetically when you refuse to dumb yourself down. There is a phenomenon in physics called quantum entanglement, the idea that particles once connected remain connected regardless of distance, and a change in one instantly affects the other. Consciousness works the same way. Humanity is entangled. We are not separate individuals, we are nodes in a unified field. When you shift your frequency, you do not just change yourself, you send a ripple through the entire field. Everyone connected to you, everyone who has ever interacted with you, everyone who will ever encounter your energy, they all feel the shift. This is why your transformation is so threatening to the powers that be. Because you are not an isolated incident. You are a domino. You are a catalyst. You are a frequency broadcaster transmitting a signal of liberation to everyone within range. And the range is wider than you think. Your posts, your conversations, your presence in a room, your energy signature in the collective field. All of it is communicating a message that cannot be censored. Freedom is real, power is accessible, and the divine is on our side. That message is spreading faster than they can contain it. They have tried to control the narrative for so long. They have owned the media, the education systems, the religious institutions, the entertainment industry, every channel through which information flows and consciousness is shaped. They have spent billions of dollars and centuries of effort building a matrix of meaning that serves their agenda. But they never accounted for one thing: the organic transmission of truth from one awakened soul to another. They never planned for the viral nature of genuine freedom. They never anticipated that consciousness itself would become contagious once enough people started waking up simultaneously. And that is exactly what is happening now. You are part of a global awakening that is happening not through organized movement, but through spontaneous recognition. Chosen ones all over the planet are breaking the same agreement at the same time without even knowing each other. They are asking the same questions, seeing through the same lies, and stepping into the same authority. This is not coincidence. This is orchestration at a level beyond human planning. This is a divine appointment, a cosmic timing, a prophetic moment that was written into the fabric of history long before you were born. You are right on time. The panic you are sensing from the structures of power is not just political. It is existential. They are not just afraid of losing control. They are afraid of becoming irrelevant. Because once enough people realize they do not need the system ceases to exist. It does not get overthrown. It does not get reformed. It simply fades away like a nightmare fades when you open your eyes. And you, by refusing to dumb yourself down, by refusing to go back to sleep, by refusing to pretend the nightmare is real, you are opening your eyes. And your open eyes are giving others permission to open theirs. Let me give you another biblical anchor point. When Jesus walked the earth, he did not come to overthrow Rome. He did not organize a political revolution. He did not gather an army to fight the empire. Instead, he did something far more subversive. He embodied a completely different operating system. He healed without permission from the medical establishment. He taught without credentials from the religious authorities. He forgave sins without authorization from the temple priests. He operated under a kingdom that was not of this world, and that kingdom had more power than all the earthly kingdoms combined. And what did the religious and political leaders do? They panicked, not because he was violent, but because he was free. Not because he was rebellious, but because he was sovereign. Not because he broke their laws, but because he exposed how irrelevant their laws were to someone operating under divine authority. They killed him because they thought that would end the threat, but it only multiplied it. Because his death and resurrection proved the ultimate point. Systems built on control cannot contain a consciousness anchored in eternal truth. They can crucify the body, but they cannot kill the spirit. They can silence the voice, but they cannot stop the frequency. You are walking in that same anointing right now. The attacks against you are not personal. They are positional. You are being opposed not because of who you are as an individual, but because of what you represent as a symbol. You are the living demonstration that their system is optional, that their authority is borrowed, and that their power is conditional on consent they can no longer guarantee. Every day you wake up and choose truth over comfort, integrity over acceptance, and alignment over approval. You are preaching a sermon louder than words. You are declaring with your very existence that another way is possible. And here is the beautiful part. You do not have to be perfect to fulfill this role. You do not have to have it all figured out. You do not have to be without struggle, doubt, or difficulty. You just have to be real. You just have to be committed to the journey of awakening, even when it is messy, even when it is painful, even when it costs you everything you thought you needed. Your authenticity is your authority. Your willingness to be a work in progress while refusing to go backwards is what makes you unstoppable. You are not a finished product. You are a living process. And that process is teaching others how to walk their own path home. Now let us talk about what happens next, because this is where many chosen ones get anxious. You have broken the agreement. You have stepped outside the matrix. You have refused to comply. And now you are wondering, what comes next? Will I be okay? Will I survive? Will I be alone forever? These are valid questions, but they are being asked from an old paradigm. You are trying to predict your future using a map from the past. But you are in new territory now. The rules are different. The provisions are different. The protection is different. You are no longer being sustained by the system. You are being sustained by Source. And Source operates by abundance, not scarcity. By provision, not lack. By multiplication, not limitation. The system taught you that resources are finite, that you have to compete for your piece of the pie, that there is not enough to go around. But the kingdom operates by different mathematics. In the kingdom, 5 loaves and 2 fish feed 5,000 with leftovers. In the kingdom, water becomes wine. In the kingdom, oil multiplies as long as there are vessels to receive it. You are no longer subject to the economics of Egypt. You are being led into the abundance of the promised land. But you have to stop thinking like a slave and start thinking like an heir. This is where most people stumble. They leave the system, but they take the system's mindset with them. They break the agreement, but they still believe the lies about limitation. They step into freedom, but they keep looking back at the chains, wondering if maybe they were safer in bondage. You cannot walk into your new reality while dragging your old beliefs with you. You have to renew your mind. You have to reprogram your thoughts. You have to replace every lie with truth, every fear with faith, and every doubt with divine knowing. This is not optional. This is essential. The call to prosperity is designed specifically for this transition. It gives you the spiritual and practical steps to align your inner world with the outer abundance that is your birthright. It shows you how to activate the frequency of prosperity, how to clear the blocks that keep you in lack, and how to build wealth in a way that honors your soul. This is not about getting rich quick or manifesting money through mental tricks. This is about coming into alignment with the flow of divine provision that has always been available to you, but was blocked by agreements you made with scarcity. The link is in the description. This is your time. True prosperity, chosen one, is multidimensional. It extends far beyond material wealth into the realms of peace, alignment, and wholeness. It is the calm that surpasses understanding, relationships grounded in truth, health birthed from harmony, and creativity flowing freely without fear. It is joy that no circumstance can steal because its source is internal, divine, and eternal. This is the prosperity the systems never wanted you to discover, the kind that makes you ungovernable, whole, and free. The world offers only survival, distraction, and dependency, but the divine offers abundance, purpose, and full activation of your potential. When you walk in this level of freedom, you will never again settle for scarcity disguised as security. As you deepen in this reality, you stop needing validation from a world still asleep. You no longer crave applause from systems built on illusion, for you have been affirmed by heaven itself. This shift, from seeking approval to embodying divine certainty, is your ultimate liberation. It makes you untouchable to control. They can no longer manipulate you through shame, fear, or isolation because you are whole, sovereign, and sustained. You have become what they fear most, a being spiritually awake, mentally clear, emotionally healed, and materially supported. The awakened soul is a revolution without violence, a threat to every false structure that feeds on ignorance and insecurity. You are that revolution in human form. In practice, this awakening looks like peace replacing argument and discernment guiding your focus. You stop debating with the unwilling and conserve your energy for those who can truly hear. You curate your consciousness, unsubscribing from fear, detaching from manipulation, and guarding your mind like a sacred temple. You stop explaining your path to those committed to misunderstanding, and you honor yourself by saying no without guilt and setting boundaries without apology. You begin to attract your true community, souls who resonate with your frequency, celebrate your growth, and expand through your freedom. Finally, you invest in what truly matters: your healing, your purpose, your relationships, and your creative expression. You no longer scatter yourself thin. You live with depth and divine clarity, embodying the world you wish to see. An act of service more powerful than any sermon. You begin to move through the world with a kind of calm authority that unnerves people who are used to seeing you anxious, confused, or seeking their approval. You speak less, but your words carry more weight. You do less, but your actions have more impact. You react less, but your presence commands more respect. This is not something you try to do. It is something that naturally emerges when you are rooted in your true identity. It is the byproduct of alignment. It is the fruit of integrity. It is the evidence that you are no longer performing a role, but living from essence. And yes, this will cost you relationships. People you thought were friends will reveal themselves as associates who were only comfortable with the version of you that stayed small. Family members who you thought would support you will oppose you when you stop playing the part they assigned you. Mentors you once looked up to will try to pull you back when you outgrow their limitations. This is part of the process. Not everyone is meant to go where you are going. Not everyone can handle the frequency you are stepping into, and trying to bring people who are not ready will only slow you down and dim your light. Let them go with love and keep moving. Do not be surprised when new people begin appearing, souls aligned with your current vibration, not your past version. New opportunities will emerge that match your frequency. New resources will flow in ways that defy old logic. You are in a different current now. The provision looks unfamiliar because the source has changed. You are no longer sustained by systems of scarcity, but nourished by the spirit of abundance. And the spirit never runs dry. When you learn to receive from this place, lack becomes impossible. Understand this too. Confidence is not pride, it is obedience. The world conditioned you to believe humility means hiding, but false humility only glorifies fear. Ego competes. Essence simply is. Ego craves validation. Essence rests in divine affirmation. When you walk boldly in who God designed you to be, you are not exalting yourself. You are exalting the one who sent you. Your light was never meant to be dim to comfort others. It was meant to illuminate what's possible. This is not arrogance. It is alignment. Not vanity, but victory. You are not merely leaving an old system. You are building a new one with your existence. Every moment of integrity, every act of truth, every refusal to compromise codes a new spiritual reality. You are the bridge between eras, the embodiment of divine evolution. The awakening isn't coming, it's happening now, and you are its living proof. Systems of control panic not because you are mistaken, but because you are accurate, and truth cannot be contained once it's revealed. Every battle you endured was preparation, not punishment. The walls that resisted you were boundaries pushing you into expansion. The wilderness that isolated you was the sacred classroom of refinement. You were never meant to fit broken systems. You were born to outgrow them. Like the prophets before you, Moses, Elijah, John, Jesus, you were not sent to seek approval from institutions, but to carry divine commission beyond their walls. You are a wilderness voice, anointed to disturb comfort and awaken destiny. So walk forward with peace, not pride, authority, not aggression. You are a living sermon, a walking revelation, a vessel of liberation in motion. Prosperity is not greed. It is divine sustainability, the fuel for your mission. Break your agreement with lack, live in overflow, and allow heaven's provision to resource your calling. The presence that called you also goes before you, stands beside you, and works through you, and that is more than enough. Antes de encerrarmos, preciso que você faça algo. Se esta mensagem despertou algo em você, se confirmou o que você já sabia em seu espírito, se lhe deu coragem para continuar, clique no botão curtir agora mesmo. Inscreva-se neste canal e nos comentários escreva inquebrável. Sele este momento. Declare ao universo que você não vai mais se contentar com pouco. And for those of you who are serious about aligning not just your spirit, but your life with divine abundance, check out the Call to Prosperity ebook in the description below. It is a step-by-step guide to activating financial and spiritual abundance. 10 practical and prophetic steps to move from lack to overflow. This is not just information, it is activation. Furthermore, to those who have supported this channel through Buy Me a Coffee, my sincere thanks. You are part of this mission, and if you also want to be our supporter, the link is below as well. Chosen one, you have heard the word today. You have received the confirmation. You have been given the commission. Now it is time to walk it out. Not perfectly, but faithfully. Not flawlessly, but courageously. Not with all the answers, but with unshakable trust in the one who holds them all. The governments can panic all they want. The systems can resist all they like. The powers can scheme all they choose. But nothing, and I mean nothing, can stop a soul that has been awakened by the divine and commissioned for this hour. You are that soul. Now go and fulfill your destiny. The world is waiting for the real you, and heaven is backing every step you take.